Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for Direct Connection. Our focus tonight is the medium that you are now watching, public television. What is our future? And how can we do a better job for viewers like you? Joining us tonight is Paula Kerger, the president and CEO of PBS. Thank you so much for a return visit to MPT.
It is great to be here on a Monday night with you, Jeff.
I think that the number one question that our audience would have for you, as the head of the Public Broadcasting Service, is when does Downton Abbey come back?
January of next year, I promise, and it looks fantastic. We are very excited to have Downton as part of our family, and you know, it's really become a post-holiday tradition for people viewing Downton Abbey. I think once you get through the holidays and you sort of bring your friends and family together, and some people even dress up, which I think is kind of fun, and it's been terrific for us.
The series has been a bit of a game changer for PBS in some ways.
Yeah. Well, you know that when you're the subject of a Saturday Night Live skit, that you have clearly crossed over into different territory. But it's been great. And the thing that's interesting about it is that it is cross-generational. I talk to so many people as I'm visiting stations around the country who tell me how fantastic it is that whole families can come together and watch the show. It's also been fascinating to watch social media around it. So, you know, here we live in an era where you can watch anything, any place you find it. You can stream it, or you can buy DVDs, or you can, but people will schedule Sunday nights so they can watch. And they also, some will sit and talk to their friends on social media and create these whole conversations. And my favorite are the people that have created social media identities, like Twitter handles based on Downton characters. My favorite is Lady Mary's eyebrows. And so if someone tweets about Lady Mary's eyebrows tonight, that I mentioned it on the air on MPT, she will email me back. I mean, she will tweet me back. So okay. It's been a lot of fun.
We could tweet that from the control room right now.
You could tweet that from the control room right now.
One of the interesting things I just saw about what's happening in television these days, that in, I don't know if it was the May ratings book or a recent ratings period, the top network in America wasn't ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS. It was DVR.
It was DVR.
It was people watching in prime time something they'd recorded earlier, and that's a game changer too.
It's complete. A couple weeks ago, we participated, as all the other media organizations, in the Television Critics Association press tour, and really the whole conversation around time-shifted viewing, how people are connecting to content, and then, of course, for the commercial industry, the whole question is, and then how do you measure it? Because obviously the old Nielsen way of measuring how many people are watching at a fixed point of time isn't as relevant, and particularly when you look at the amount of time shifting. When we look at the numbers for people that watch public media, we get the same numbers everyone else does for the same services. We see that the number of people that come in, you know, 2 days, 3 days after a broadcast, up to 7 days after a broadcast, increases the audience sometimes by 40 or 50%.
Wow. So
there's a significant number of people that are still watching television live or live-ish as it's fed out from the networks, but a lot of people are making decisions of how to curate their content. And for public media, as well as every other media organization, we want to make sure that we're there for you, however you want to receive the content.
And the commercial networks know that the people who live through their DVRs and watch shows that way also know how to fast forward through the commercials. Yeah. And we don't so much care.
We don't have quite that challenge. But you know, we have really large audiences. I think sometimes people think of public television, and because we're public, I don't know, maybe they think of spinach. I can't quite figure it out. We're the 6th most watched network after the networks and ESPN right now. And so we have a very large audience. I like to believe it's because people want content that is entertaining, but also is educational, and when we do our job really well, inspirational. And so I always like to think think of time with public television as time well spent. And over the last couple of years, as we've really looked to bring some new storytellers to the schedule, it's really, to me, quite gratifying to see how many people of all ages are really quite excited about the work that we're doing.
So what are you spending your time on? What are the big challenges for public media right now?
Well, I think part of it is what we're describing right now, is that the way that people access content has really shifted a lot in the last couple of years. Because I visit so many of our stations and travel, therefore, quite a bit, I oftentimes will walk down the aisle of a train or a plane and see people that are streaming. I'm always happy when they're streaming our programs. So you have people that are watching on tablets. You have people that are watching on smartphones. You have people that are watching on that very big set in their living room. And how do we meet all those needs? How do we continue to be important for children and families with the content that we produce? We do a lot of work directly for Classroom. Maryland Public Television is one of the stations that's really been at the center of trying to figure out how do you take all this great content that we produce and really give teachers the tools to bring education alive in the classroom. And that's been a big piece of what we're spending a lot of time thinking about. What does that next generation look like? And of course, we're public television, and so we always really work quite hard to make sure that we have the resources to do the kind of work that we hope to bring to the public each and every day. So the contributions of viewers like you are tremendously important. Thank you. But we're also looking for ways that we can really bring resources in so that we can create the kind of conversations that we feel are important in this country, bringing light, not heat, around conversations. And it takes money to do that. So figuring out where that's going to come from is a big piece of my job.
What's the funding environment like at the moment? I don't hear anybody right now calling for defunding PBS. And at the same time, the economy, when you took over, which was 7 or 8 years ago, the economy was just about to head over the cliff. And you had some difficult times, but it's gotten better.
Yeah, it's been interesting to period of time in public television's history as we've looked to put the funding together. And, we do have periodic discussions in Washington about the importance of whether public broadcasting should be funded at all. I argue, actually, our funding doesn't come to PBS. The funding that comes into public broadcasting actually goes to the stations around the country. And so there are parts of the country, particularly rural areas, that without the federal appropriation, the stations wouldn't exist. So that's really what the federal debate is about. It's making sure that every American has access to content. And the economy, we're not immune to any of the ups and downs that we're all juggling, and so these last years have been complicated. This year has been a little better, but we try to do the best that we can with the resources that we have, and be very conscious of what we're stewarding on behalf of the public, and somehow it seems to work.
A few people watching may know this piece of trivia that your grandfather put WBJC on the air, which is a public radio station. The tower is maybe 10 miles from here. And you grew up here and you went to the University of Baltimore. Did you plan on running the public broadcasting service?
Oh my goodness, no. It just sort of worked out. I think, sometimes I think that perhaps it was in my DNA, because my grandfather was an engineer. I mean, it was from that perspective that he became involved with the radio station, as he was teaching a lot of mostly men that were coming back from the war and were on the GI Bill, and he taught electronics, and he was a physics professor, and so this was a way to give his students real life experience. But he was also interested in theater, and so I like to think I have both of those pieces of my background, which suits me quite well for public media. But no, it just happened, and I feel very lucky because I grew up watching this station. I often say that one of my favorite shows when I was a kid was Hodgepodge Lodge.
Absolutely.
And so I was thrilled a couple of years ago to finally meet Miss Jean, and it was a really important part of our family's life that we watched a lot of public television. So it's a great honor now to be running PBS.
Let's take a look at one of the programs that is coming down the pike from PBS this fall. This is a Ken Burns program focused on the Roosevelts, all of them. Let's take a quick preview.
Great.
This fall, from director Ken Burns.
You can't expect people like that to happen all the time.
The monumental saga of an exceptional American family who whose impact is still felt across the nation.
It's an extraordinary story. The drama of it is unmatched in our history.
Theodore, the once sickly boy who stormed into Washington as if he was charging into battle.
He didn't dare slow down. There were demons.
Franklin, struck down by illness, he would pull himself back up while lifting the country out of depression and war.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
You just had a sense this.
And not only is there a lot of great history in this program, but at 14 hours, it is a marathon.
Yes,
and
it is.
You're taking advantage of some of the technology we were talking about earlier in the program that as I understand it, the day after the premiere episode runs, the whole thing is going to be online for those folks
streaming.
who are into binge viewing, I guess.
So we're broadcasting it. Ken's work has always done extremely well running it night after night. So it'll premiere on September 14th, and it will run 2 hours every night for a week.
And I think we may be doubling up. We may play 2 and 2 again.
A lot of stations are doubling up and playing it twice. Some are playing it again on the weekends. But we thought that by allowing streaming as well for people that have difficulty trying to figure out their schedules and want to come back into it, it gives another opportunity. I think that it's reflective of the times that we live in, that people expect that if they miss something on television, they'll be able to find it some other place. And so we're trying to give people an opportunity. It's an amazing series. Ken always... we always joke that when he finishes a project, he says it's his best work ever, and he said that about the Roosevelts. But I think he may be right. This is an extraordinary series that really weaves together the 3 lives of Teddy, Franklin, and Eleanor, and that actually has never been done before. It is quite powerful. It is quite an amazing American story, and we're very proud to be kicking off our fall season with the Roosevelts.
Let's take a phone call in Baltimore County. This is Linda. Linda, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks. I'd like to know if you'll ever bring back that wonderful series that took place in the English countryside. I think the main character played by Robert Hardy was the veterinarian, called All Creatures Great and Small.
Yeah.
Linda, thank you very much.
That has been a great and very powerful series that many stations have broadcast, and I don't know if Maryland Public Television has it in the schedule to come back at some point, but it is one that's much beloved.
We will
James
find out.
Harriet is the author that wrote the books that the series was based on. It's really quite beloved.
Somebody told me that PBS has too many Masterpiece Theater episodes in the pipeline.
We have
There's
a lot of great drama.
overabundance.
We have a lot of great drama right now, which is, I think, a reflection of the times. I think if you look at television, and I would never suggest that the only great television is on public television. Of course, I think we have a lot of wonderful programming, but we are in a golden age, I think, of drama on television. If you look at on some of the broadcast networks, certainly on cable and on public television, we've had just quite an abundance of really strong, powerful stories. And so, yes, we have a challenge right now to really figure out how to bring it all to the American public in a way that is exciting and important. And we look forward to a great year of drama ahead.
There's one other program on the fall schedule that I wanted to highlight for a minute, and then we'll get back to the phones.
Sure.
This is from Henry Louis Gates Jr., who has Maryland roots, and the title of the program is Finding Your Roots. Let's take a look.
Mark. All right, we good? I'm a little nervous, I will say. You ready?
Yeah.
Good. Where do you think those dark stories come from, Stephen?
Dr. Gates, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you.
My man, we are just getting started.
I'm nervous about this.
Let's go, showtime.
At his funeral, there were like 100 people who he promised.
Skip, I wanted you to see this picture. This is my grandmother.
I've only seen part of this trailer. but this looks fabulous.
And one of the last pieces we just saw was another great native of Baltimore, Anna DeVere Smith, who is in this season's Finding Your Roots. We're really interested in this project because it's not only people's own personal journey, but so much about our collective history we can learn through genealogy. And Skip's work in really not only helping people trace back their family's roots, but really trying to understand how we're all connected is really quite powerful, particularly for kids, to get them excited and interested about history.
Let's go out to Anne Arundel County. This is Harriet. Harriet, thank you for calling. Go ahead. Harriet, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you're on.
My question is, how do you balance liberal and conservative on your programs? It seems to me that is it written in your federal business that you must be neutral, or how does that work?
I'm so glad you called. Harriet, thank you very much.
Yeah,
I have the note here somewhere that says anytime I go give a talk somewhere, I always get that question.
Yeah.
And
it's an important question. I think it's an important question right now because of if you look at the news and you look at so many news organizations that really blur the line between point of view and news. And so our news work, best represented by the NewsHour, which just broadcast, I think is a true effort to not only tell the stories of the day, but to put them in context. We look very hard at bringing in different viewpoints. That is not being neutral. That is showing different points of view about the news stories of the day. And I think that is important because what is often missed in this country, I think right now, is the ability for us, when we have debate about important conversations, is to be able to sit around the table and each express our own perspectives. And that, I think, is what we attempt to do here on public television. You look at a series like Washington Week, you look at the commentary on the NewsHour, and you know, obviously the news portions of the NewsHour are actually news, but in commentary, you want to have a difference of perspectives. I always look at the viewer feedback as one gauge of, and we have an ombudsman who carefully watches and gives the public an opportunity to feedback their comments. And if we have feedback on a program that claims that we've been too liberal and too conservative in the same program, which happens often, then I think we've probably hit the right mark.
Got it about right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting time. With you have the polarization of media, but you also have the audience following that polarization, or maybe leading it. So the conservatives are watching Fox, the liberals are watching MSNBC. Not terribly many people are watching CNN, so you have a little bit of an echo chamber with people just hearing the opinions that they want to hear.
And I think that somehow, if we hope to move forward as a country, we've got to be able to come together with different points of view and discuss and debate and then come to agreement and move forward. It doesn't mean consensus, by the way.
No, and the credibility that Jim Lehrer, for one, built is priceless in being able to do it.
Well, he recognizes he's in the news business and not the entertainment business, and I think that's an important distinction.
Back to the phones. Baltimore County, this is Pat. Pat, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Well, hello. First of all, thank you for such great drama and comedy, because who wants to watch regular commercial TV anymore? It's just wonderful.
Thank you, Pat.
My question is, I still get my television over the airwaves, and I'd like to see MPT kind of strengthen its broadcast strength, so I can get a more consistent broadcast. I get broken up every now and then, even though I have an antenna.
What part of the county are you in?
Catonsville.
Catonsville.
A very heavily treed area.
Trees will do it. Trees are an issue sometimes, but it's funny, Pat, because there are a lot of people around the country just like you, at least 50 million, that rely on over-the-air television. And it's funny to me that people will sometimes say, I didn't know you could get television over the air. They think that the only way that you can get television is through satellite or through cable. And there's a lot of people that really rely on over-the-air television, and we've collectively make a big investment on making sure that you receive the signal. But my guess is, and I'm not a technologist myself, but my guess is that the leaves may be an issue. The problem with the new digital broadcast is that it's not like the old analog broadcast where you remember you had the ghosting and so forth. When
static.
Yeah, and so with digital, you either have the signal or you don't, and the signal can't pass through some physical objects, so that may be the issue.
But Pat, give us a phone call during business hours one day. We'll see if we can put our engineers on that a little bit. Catonsville ought to work. Let's go out to Carroll County. This is Dale. Dale, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Good evening. I was going to ask about the funding. What percentage of the typical funding for, say, Maryland Public Television or some other state comes from federal, state, corporate, and private?
Dale, thanks very much for the phone call. You can talk about the national picture.
I'll talk about it in aggregate, and you'll need to get someone from Maryland Public Television to explain specifically, because the funding for each station is a little different depending upon. So Maryland Public Television, for example, does get funding from the state. Not all public television stations receive state funding. So obviously the state is an important piece here. In aggregate, 15%, that's 15% of the funding that comes into public broadcasting comes from the federal government. And that, as I said, is an aggregate number, so that some stations, it's a lesser percentage of their revenue. In some of the rural parts of the country, that funding may represent 50% of their funding. And that's why my comment a few minutes ago, we really work very hard with this public-private partnership. We never take for granted federal appropriation. We feel that that's tremendously important, that we continue to earn those funds and that we're good stewards of those funds. But it is a partnership. The largest percentage of money that comes into public broadcasting indeed comes from viewers like you. That's why the fundraising for stations, and I'm not giving a fundraising spiel, but if you haven't become a member of MPT, do it, is really tremendously important. And to a lesser extent corporate, though we have a lot of great corporate partners and foundations. But it's really individual philanthropy is the lion's share of funding that comes into public media.
Was the need for non-commercial broadcasting more evident maybe in the late 1960s when they stuck a shovel in the ground out here for the first time and created educational and non-commercial television than it is today when we have this cacophony of 500 channels and unlimited internet
and a lot
stuff.
of reality shows. And so it's really interesting because there's so many cable organizations that were created with the idea that they would be the commercial version of public television, and that has shifted. You look at you look at that. No one remembers A&E once stood for Arts and Entertainment, or that Bravo was once a place where you saw fine arts, or even that History Channel was a place that you could get history documentaries every night of the week. And so I think that what we try to do with the programming that we produce is we look carefully at what everyone else is doing. We made a very deep investment in history, make a very deep investment on Wednesday nights with science programming, which has gotten a very consistently large audience of people that are interested in really understanding science, not just what I think of as science light. And I argue that we are in fact the home for performance on public television. On television, visual arts wouldn't exist on television without public television. So I always say that we are not in the same business as commercial television. We just happen to use the same tools. And we're just different.
Very good. Let's squeeze in one more call. St. Mary's County, this is Maria. Maria, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Yes. First of all, I want to thank MPT for bringing all this wonderful programming. I love the Great Britain broadcasting. I'm tired of reality shows, and I thank you all for it. And my question is, when are you all going to bring new programming on Doc Martens? I have all my family and friends hooked on it.
Great question, Maria. Thank you so much. You're not the head of the programming department.
I'm not,
I should point out.
I actually am not responsible for Doc Martin either, but I think there's a new season coming up of Doc Martin. So, but Maria, thank you. We're very pleased that you're watching and that you're enjoying public television, and we hope that you continue to find lots of programming that you enjoy.
How much effort are you putting into the digital space? We talked about streaming Ken Burns. And the difficulty in measuring sometimes how much traffic there is. How big a focus is that for PBS?
Well, we're paying attention to it. I think in terms of dollars, it's relatively small. But the ability to really put content in places where people can find it, but also creating unique digital content. So we do a whole series called Blank on Blank, for example, which we do on YouTube. Which is really these wonderful radio interviews that have been animated that really are, powerful, wonderful resources.
Very good. Paula Kerger, president of PBS, back to her roots here in the state of Maryland for the night. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks. Wonderful to be with you.
Do appreciate it. Thursday at this time on Your Money in Business, a century of crabs for Phillips Foods. We will talk to Steve Phillips. That's Thursday at 7:30. Now, for all of us here at MPT, I'm Jeff Salkin. Thanks for watching Direct Connection, and have a good night.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.